Hello, so today we're going to have a look at pollutant gases. We're going to look at 5 pollutant gases, how they are formed, what their impact in the environment is, and what their formula is. We're going to do this as a spider diagram. Once we've looked at the first 2 pollutant gases, there'll be a pause and some questions for you to have a look at, and then we'll look at the remaining 3. Try and copy the mind map down as we go along. And then obviously once you've finished it at the end, maybe try and recreate as much of it as you can from memory. So the first pollutant gas that we're going to look at is sulfur dioxide. The formula for sulfur dioxide is quite simple. It's SO2. So that's a capital S for the element sulfur, a capital O for the element oxygen, and there are 2 oxygen atoms and 1 sulfur atom per sulfur dioxide molecule. Sulfur dioxide is caused when sulfur impurities contained in fuels burn. So if we look at coal, for example, and if I use this to represent a lump of coal, coal is almost completely made of carbon. However, dotted in it there are going to be small pockets or groups of sulfur atoms, and when we burn coal, the sulfur atoms in the coal also burn or react with oxygen to produce sulfur dioxide. So if I was going to summarize it, I would say it's when sulfur impurities in fuels are combusted, and we could summarize that with a chemical equation to say sulfur plus oxygen O2 goes to make SO2. Sulfur dioxide has a very big environmental impact, and that it causes acid rain. So it makes rainwater more acidic, which causes many problems in the environment, particularly in making rivers and lakes more acidic, which makes it difficult for certain organisms to continue to live there. The other pollutant gas that we're going to look at now are nitrogen oxides. Now, the formula for nitrogen oxides is a little bit unusual because what we tend to call it is NO with a little subscript X here. So that N is for nitrogen, a capital N for the element nitrogen, and a capital O for the element oxygen. But this X is probably something we haven't seen before. And the reason we use that is because there are actually quite a few different nitrogen oxides that are present in nitrogen oxide pollution. The main 2 are NO, which is nitrogen monoxide, or what used to be called nitrous oxide, and then NO2. Nitrogen oxides are formed during a reaction that takes place in car engines or any internal combustion engine. So just as a little reminder, you're going to get a really bad drawing of a car here from me, and then I'm going to point to the car engine there. And what happens is air contains N2, nitrogen, and O2, which is oxygen. The engine of a car is at a very high temperature and a very high pressure. So the air, which contains nitrogen and O2, reacts in the high pressure and high temperatures of a car engine. Nitrogen oxide has 2 environmental problems. The first one of which is something called photochemical smog, but it also is a very small component of the total amount of greenhouse gases, the main ones of which are carbon dioxide and methane, but nitrogen oxides are a small component of greenhouse gases which contribute to the raising of the Earth's temperature. So at this point, what I'm going to do is ask you to have a look at these 6 questions. You can pause the video, and then once you've answered the questions, you can have a look at the answers. So hopefully you've had a look at answering those questions, and those are the answers. Right, let's go back to our mind map. We've looked at sulfur dioxide, we've looked at nitrogen oxides. We're now going to look at 3 pollutant gases that are all based on carbon. All hydrocarbon fuels contain hydrocarbon, and when the carbon in them reacts with oxygen, then we're going to get 3 potentially different pollutant gases. The first one of which is carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide has the formula CO2. It's very important that we write CO2 this way. Unfortunately, you'll see it written many different ways in the media, but it is a capital C for the element carbon, a capital O for the element oxygen, and a small subscript 2, which means that each molecule of carbon dioxide contains 1 carbon atom and 2 oxygen atoms. Carbon dioxide is formed during the complete combustion of a hydrocarbon fuel. But also, if we were going to look further than this, obviously coal, which is just carbon. Carbon dioxide, which hopefully you already know, is a greenhouse gas, and it is the main greenhouse gas because of the quantity that it is produced in, and leads to a raising of the Earth's temperature, which is leading to climate change. There's 2 more pollutant gases which I'm actually going to deal with together. One of which is carbon monoxide, and the other one is carbon particulates, which we will sometimes call soot. Now, the reason we're looking at carbon particulates and carbon monoxide together is because both of these are formed during the incomplete combustion of a hydrocarbon fuel. Incomplete combustion occurs when there is a poor or limited supply of oxygen. Carbon monoxide is very toxic, and its formula is a C and an O. Capital C, capital O, 1 carbon atom, 1 oxygen atom. One of the most dangerous things about carbon monoxide pollution is that it is a colourless gas, so you can't really see it, and it is an odourless, which means it doesn't smell. So unfortunately, if there is carbon monoxide pollution, if you're exposed to carbon monoxide pollution, you really can't tell that it's there. It stops the blood being able to transport oxygen around the body. Carbon particulates have the formula C, just for carbon atoms, and it leads to something called global dimming. Now, you don't need to know what global dimming is in much detail, but if I just explain, it's the idea that we were putting carbon particulates were being released into the atmosphere, and we're reducing the amount of light that could reach the Earth's surface, and therefore making the amount of light available smaller. So here is the mind map in its entirety, in case you want to look at it, almost its entirety. And now there are 6 more questions for you to have a look at. If you want to pause the video. And now there are the answers. There'll be a Google form quiz for you to do which accompanies this lesson.